Good morning, podcasters. Today is Thursday, May the 14th, 2026, and today we're talking co-host chemistry with community member John Jamingo, exploring what makes a podcast partnership really work when personalities, opinions, expectations, and creative choices collide. So if you're listening live on Clubhouse, hit the share button top right-hand side of the screen and share it however Clubhouse lets you. And if you're catching us via podcast, YouTube, LinkedIn, please share this episode with a fellow podcaster. And now give us about 30 seconds and we'll get things rolling. Thanks for being here. The Podcasting Morning Show is powered by Ironic Media, helping podcasters launch, polish, and grow great shows. And by Content Creators Accountant, helping creators build real business behind their content. Good morning again, Podcasting Morning Show. Welcome. I am your host, Marc Ronick, and currently on stage with me, we have BC Babbles, Ralph Estep, Sid Meadows, DR Fay, and our guest, who I mentioned earlier, John Jamingo. We will get into all of that in just a moment. First, I want to remind you and actually tell you that tomorrow we will play our first Spotlight series promo for you. And this is where if you want to get your podcast featured on the Podcasting Morning Show for free, submit a 60-second clip about your show, something that gives people a real feel for your podcast. And then if we select it, we'll play your clip on a future episode, share what stood out to us, and introduce your show to our community of podcasters and creators. There's no strings attached to this offer. We are simply trying to support our fellow community members. This goes for our cast and crew. This goes for our live audience. It goes for our podcast listening audience. Whoever you are, if you are a part of this community, you are more than welcome to submit your clip at podcastingmorningshow.com/spotlight. So do that, and tomorrow we will feature our first one. Okay, so today we're talking about one of the most important relationships in podcasting, the co-host relationship. This is something certainly near and dear to my heart. And because, look, a great co-host can make a show more fun, more consistent, more dynamic. It can make it a little easier on you as well as the other co-host. But when that relationship is unclear or unhealthy, it can create tension both on the air and behind the scenes. And by the way, is on the air really the right way to say it? I'm just so used to saying on the air from radio days and just a lot of radio listening.
Too. Yeah. What else? Maybe it's too many words the other way, you know.
Or I guess could we say convenient. On the stream instead of on the air? I don't know. It just doesn't flow off the tongue the same way. So as I said, helping us today with this conversation is one of our newer community members, John Jamingo. And since, Ralph, you coordinated this one, I'm going to hand it off to you to share a little more about John and officially introduce him in today.
Oh, absolutely. Good morning, everybody. Joining us this morning is John Jamingo. Now, John hosts with a co-host, and he told me before we got started, he's had a number of co-hosts over the years. We might get into how many that is.
Yeah.
But we're going to dig into some great moments, the challenges, and the best ways to manage those relationships. And listen, we also want this to be a room discussion. So as we go, I'm going to encourage everybody to jump in with things that have worked for you, things that have not worked, and those best practices you've learned from sharing the mic with someone else. I think this is going to be a real engaging conversation here today. So John, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Like I said, I was trying to count how many co-hosts I have. I know it's over 10. At one time there was 7 in one show, kind of like this show. So here's the thing. When you have a good co-host, hang on to them with both hands, because when you lose one, it is extremely tough to find one to replace them.
John, I think actually, Ralph, I think we have a few of those co-hosts in our YouTube chat currently. Uh-oh. Yes, I mean, I'm guessing based on what they're saying, but we have one person. Is this? Can you see the chat there, John?
I can't see the chat. I'm sorry. I'm in the back of.
No, that's okay. but I think one of them is Weathered Soul.
That
and
is Bruce.
Okay, so I was right. Okay, and the other one's Boomer Bob.
Bob is one. Yes, he'll be talked about a lot today.
Okay, and a few others haven't identified themselves yet, but it sounds like, yes, your co-hosts are following you around, John, so be careful.
Oh, they know me.
All right, sorry, Ralph, go ahead.
Yeah, John, I want to get right into it. So tell us about your current co-host setup and what makes that relationship work. I listened to your show. Her name is, I think it's Kate. You guys refer to her as the Duchess. It seems like you guys have good chemistry, but I have to be honest with you. It is entertaining sometimes the way you guys go back and forth at each other. But I just wanted you to start with what does that look like and what makes that relationship work?
Well, so the funny thing about that was the way that I met Kate was through a co-host meltdown, which is where I got into it. And I had 5 minutes into the show, I had a huge meltdown and quit the show. And then that clip, because you're recording it and you forget that it is recorded, that was played on a couple of other podcasts, and it just spread like wildfire. And at first I was very embarrassed by that, but I realized it was one of the best things that could have happened after I got over myself and went back and listened to it as a listener.
We need to get that clip. Why
or
are
at
we
least
left out?
Or at least understand if it's appropriate what the meltdown was about.
Yeah.
The meltdown is how anal retentive I am about podcasting and how I really want to make it a good show. And these clowns, I will call them clowns, friendly clowns, were there just to drive me crazy. And it worked. And I finally quit. And you couldn't play the clip on this show. It would just be one solid beep. So you couldn't play that on here. So I quit. And it went viral. And that's how I met Kate, because Kate was listening to this on another show. She doesn't live that far away from me. Rage Quit heard around the world. Yes, Bob. Yeah, I know. He was part of it.
We're displaying some things that are happening in the chat on the video. Yeah.
So Kate had started listening to me, and Bob couldn't be there one day. And she said, well, I'll just come to your house and I'll co-host with you. And I said, don't threaten me with a good time. Come on down. And we had a very good chemistry back and forth. So I had an extra microphone and a microphone. So I sent her home with it. I said, here, go home with this and let's see what happens. And she didn't. It was the first time she's really podcasted before, and she's done a great job, and she's into it, and she puts up with me. She puts up with all my nonsense and all my changes.
Fair enough. And by the way, I do want to say that those of you that are listening live, both on Clubhouse and on the video streams, you're welcome to be a part of this conversation. If you have experiences with your co-hosts that you want to share and how you worked them out, or if you worked them out, you are more than welcome to be a part of this. This isn't just a focus on John, but since John's got a lot of experience, that's why we have him on stage. And by the way, a good morning to Jonathan Howard, who has joined us on stage as well. So with that, Ralph, do you have another question? Or you want
I do, John.
Okay,
I do, John. So have you always done shows with a co-host? Have you ever done anything solo? And what made you decide, hey, I definitely want to be in a co-host type relationship?
The way I got into podcasting was I had just left a career, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I saw this thing on my phone and said, podcast, what is this? And I was going to college for radio, TV, film, and then got into the elevator business for 24 years, and that ended. And then so I said, let me just try this. And that's how it started. And so I started first solo. And then the reason I started doing this is because when I was in college radio, I had a friend, and we used to sit around and we would talk back and forth, as every podcaster does. He says, oh, this should be a podcast. And it took me 3 years to get him to say yes to do the podcast. So then we started that in 2016. It was called the Brand X Podcast. It still goes on. It's once a month. We come down. He comes here. We go in the studio. We have a bar. We drink. We eat lunch. We day drink and eat lunch, and do a show. That's when I started basically with a co-host. But I have done solo shows, and I like the co-host show better because you can bounce off people. You can see when things are working and when things aren't working.
Fair enough. And then, that's actually a good lead into my next question as far as understanding things when they're working, when they're not working. Was there a moment that you realized that Kate and you actually worked well together on air, or was it more of just like a long stretch where you just started to notice over time?
It was the first time that she was here, and I said, she's got what it takes to be a podcast co-host.
How do
She
you?
doesn't know anything about it, but she knows how to talk. And
I was going to ask, how do you know that makes her, what makes her a good co-host?
well, first of all, she has a very bubbly personality. She has a great voice, and we would go back and forth, and I would throw things at her, and it wouldn't faze her. You have to realize that the show that we do is it's a not safe for work podcast. So I'll throw things at her, and a lot of times people would shy away from it, but she digs right in and does not shy away from it.
Yeah, and I see one of your former co-hosts says she's also much better looking than you.
Yes, Bruce, we know.
Go ahead, Ralph.
Yeah, and the truth is, I mean, she just holds it with you with no problem, dude. She's able to give it back to you right away. But what do you think is the biggest ingredient of that strong co-host relationship, John? What do you think are the key factors that make it so strong?
I think we understand each other. Being from New Jersey, this area of New York, Philadelphia, this area here, it's a different kind of person. When I go out into the country somewhere else, the people are so nice. I feel people from this area, we feel like they're trying to sell us something like a timeshare. So just her being the same in the same area and having the same attitude that we call it the Jersey attitude, I think that does help.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, I even coming from the mid-Atlantic area where I was raised, when I moved here to North Carolina, it's still hard for me. I've been here almost 4 years. It's still hard for me to get used to how friendly everyone is out here. I don't quite go as far as thinking they're trying to sell me something, but it does always catch me off guard how friendly everyone is.
John, do you think you have to be a close friend with somebody to really be strong? I know we did an evaluation last week of a podcast, husband and wife, actually, and I posted about this today, and she goes, yeah, it's even harder when it's your husband. But do you see that as being part of that chemistry too, becoming a good friend with that person, John?
Now, I think the most important thing is having the same goals for the show. One of the issues I had with Bob was Bob likes to have chaos. Bob's a big chaos guy. And I'm not. I feel that the most important person out of all of it is the audience. I'm here to entertain the audience. And Bob would do things, and all I could see and in my mind was people clicking off, like, what am I listening to? And clicking off. And it used to send me into tizzies. The thing with Bob and I love him like a brother, just so you know. I love Bob like a brother. But there are times, I have clip after clip of me losing my mind. Where we're doing something. I'm like, what are we doing here? What are we, and it is entertaining. I'll give you that. But at times it does not really make a good show. You have to know, again, I always say, you have to know what the audience wants. I guess I could come on and fight for an hour every time with people, and that would be entertaining, but that's not really what the show's about. It's, I guess it's like a nugget that once in a while it's fun to watch. Mommy and Daddy are fighting.
Yeah. BC, I think you have something. Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So
Morning.
I'm curious, John, across your podcasting career and having co-hosts over time, have you found if at any points where consistency was hard to maintain, that having co-hosts and other people involved to kind of carry the quote unquote onus of having a show, did that help you maintain consistency because now you've got other people involved who want to make this thing happen? And if so, do you find that perhaps involving co-hosts purposefully could be the solution to someone who otherwise has consistency issues with their show?
Yes, you do have to have someone that has the time and will put in the time, especially if you're going to live stream. We live stream Mondays and Thursdays at 6:30. 6 o'clock, we have to be there. So, you have to have that. Also, you have to know when to cut bait with a co-host. I had one co-host who was my cousin and another person, and they were just not very good co-hosts. And I think I tried it for like 5 episodes or 6 maybe. And then I'm like, okay, this isn't working. Let's pull the plug on this. This is a waste of time. And it's hard to do. But again, if if you keep the audience first and you realize that you wouldn't listen to this on a good day, why even keep continuing? You're just wasting your time.
Right.
Yeah, and I can attest to that. I mean, you do have to know when it's time, and it is also hard, right? And I've shared a little bit with everybody. My old show, the Mark and Lowell show, my co-host was also my best friend, like somebody I grew up with and continued that friendship into adulthood and still friends today. And I really believe our show just kind of faded, being completely transparent, and it faded around the pandemic. And I think a lot of it faded because I felt like I was doing all the heavy lifting. And by the way, this is me kind of looking back now at it, right? Like I don't think I was connecting enough with it at the time, but and it's not a knock on him either. I'm sure he would come at me right now hearing all this, but it's really not a knock on him because that was the way we developed our chemistry. Our show was that I was really doing all the heavy lifting. I was the producer, I was the lead host, and over time it really started to burn me out. I needed some extra help, and that just wasn't his area, his strength, right? His strength was showing up and being really damn funny on the mic, right? Like that, he made the show a lot funnier. And so there was a lot of value there, but at some point I had to recognize that, you know what, this isn't working anymore. And instead, I just kind of kept pushing through until we ended up pod fading. And I've shared this with you before. I still have people that listened to that show that are reaching out like, where did it go? When is it coming back? Right. And so it can be a problem if you can't stop, identify where the problem is, and actually do something about it. That can really cause you as a podcast host a lot of stress.
I had that with a friend of mine where I was the problem. So in other words, I wanted to, let's do video. Okay. Let's set up a studio. Let's do this. And he said to me, several times, I don't want to do all this. I really don't. I'm like, oh no, it's fine. It'll be great. And then he one time he just said, I've had enough. And it was 4 years. We didn't do a show for 4 years together. And then one time we were just out having lunch and he goes, why don't we just bring the show back and we'll do it like once a month. And I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do that. And
okay.
It's been the best thing. So if I were you, I'd reach out to that co-host and see if he can make it once a month or something like that, just to get. I say it's I'm lying. I say it's an excuse to get together, have lunch, have a few drinks, but I really, really love podcasting with him. It is, sorry, Kate, this is my favorite show to do.
Yeah, Kate's here now, by the way.
Yeah,
Kate's in the YouTube chat.
It is my favorite show to do. And Boomer Bunker is a close second. It is a love of mine. I'm not going to lie. It's something that I've always wanted to do. I do it for fun. It's certainly not for the money.
Boomerbunker.com, right? By the way? Yes. And yeah, go check that out. We've been sharing the link here on Clubhouse, but we haven't actually said it out loud. So boomerbunker.com. And DR, I think you have a question. Hello?
She locked up.
Oh, she locked up. Yeah. All right. So we'll come back to you, DR, in just a second.
Sorry.
Mark, I was just going to jump in and say something before DR. And this is the thing that, like, Mark and I've had to work through this. Mark and I have had a lot of really, I want to say tense conversations, but probably seemed a little tense. And we've had to work out, I call it kind of like a marriage almost. We've had to learn how to talk to each other. We've had to learn how to not text some days because you can't see the facial expressions through text. And we've had some tough times, I would say, Mark. But the cool thing is we always come back to a place of respect, and we come back to a place of let's just communicate and work through this. I didn't mean to jump in front of you, DR, but I just think it's important that you got to maintain the lines of communication. And when something's bothering you, got to come out and say it. But also, don't just come out and say it. I've learned this the hard way. Think about the right time to come out and say it, and do it in the right way, because that has been a little bit of a stumble with Mark and I too, if I'm being totally honest.
Okay, we're going to go to DR. And by the way, yes, I am totally with you, Ralph. And we have had some tense moments. And I think a lot of that more had to do with the early stages of a partnership, right? Like, I think you have to, if it's not somebody you grew up with, like I did on my last show, if it's somebody brand new to you, there's going to be some tension, I think, in a lot of cases. And I think it's just a matter of how you handle those tense situations. That's going to really show whether or not this relationship is going to work between the two co-hosts. And okay, so DR, I'm coming to you, but first I just want to shout out Sid. I see you, Sid. We're going to come to you right after DR. Go ahead, DR.
So John is on the inside, the production side of podcasting.
Yes.
But for most of the listeners, they are not on the inside. And Gordon Firemark has what he calls a prenup for co-hosts. And I think it's such a good idea.
Yeah, it's funny
Eh,
because Jonathan in the chat said it's like a marriage,
Yeah.
co-hosts. Yeah.
And Gordon Firemark brings up some really, really good questions, like who's going to carry the weight of the show? What if someone can't make it? And what if it splits up? What about monetization? He brings up some really, really good questions. And so that prenup is great. But the problem is most people approach the whole co-host thing as my best friend or a friend of mine, just like you did, Mark.
Mhm.
And it's hard to bring up that whole prenup. Let's get a contract going between us. So that's my job as a producer. I'm the one that brings it up for the two of you. I'm the one, I carry that.
Mm.
I don't know. I carry that heavy load of bringing up the stuff that you don't want to talk about, but is important.
That's a really great point, DR. It's another advantage to hiring a producer or somebody to work with you and your team to kind of be the bad guy when needed, right? So that this way, the two co-hosts can kind of have you to attack.
DR is the heavy.
Yes, that's right. You're the heavy. All right, let's go to Sid. Take it away, Sid. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. So I'm actually have a friend that I'm working on a partnership with or a project with, let's call it. We're going to do some live event podcasting. We are submitting our first proposal to an events company on Friday for live event podcasting. And we've been talking about how we could take the synergies that exist between the two of us, because our audiences are similar but different. He has one side of the industry, I have another side of the industry, and we could both benefit from crossover. So we've been talking about, what could we do? Maybe we do a short series podcast or something to that effect, right? So my question is, when you're looking at getting into a co-host relationship, what would you say, John, are like 3 key things that the co-hosts who are friends but have never worked together like this should focus on to build a relationship / build their chemistry together?
Who's going to do what, and who's going to run the show? Who's going to take point? Who's going to be the backup? I worked with Jeff Brown through a project called TV Time. He taught me so much in just a short time because he used to do Christian morning radio in the Midwest, and we would be together. And he would always he had hand signals that he would use. I don't know why we don't use hand signals so people know when they're going to. Mark, you do a fantastic job of telling people, hey, I'm going to come to you. You're next.
Thanks. Yeah.
So you do a fantastic job of that. And then who's going to do the editing? Who's going to get the topics? That's the most important thing. And also you can't be afraid to have the hard conversations.
Yeah.
When something doesn't go right. And then sometimes you have to say, I really want to do this. And your co-host says it's a deal breaker for me. And then you just say, no, you just got to go, okay. And you have to respect them and not do it. That to me, I think is one of the best ways to handle a co-host relationship like that.
Fair enough. And I'm curious, John, what do you think, what does a good co-host do that the listeners may not ever notice?
They bail you out when you're in trouble. So if you're doing something and you need to find something, or you're trying to set up the next topic or next segment you're going to do, and you're looking away, they can say, okay, they're not paying attention to me. So now it's my time to shine. I got to get in there and start talking, because there's nothing that I hate worse than dead air. If someone stops talking and they're all staring at me, I just fill up with anxiety, and then I freak out like, why isn't anybody talking? Somebody talk. Someone say something, anything. That.
All right. Ralph, you got something?
I do. Here we go. I'm going to pivot a little bit. And that is, we talked a little about chemistry. We talked about structure, but John, how have you found a way to make that work with the co-host? Like, do you have a planning meeting every week? Do you do stuff to set up a clear delineation of what that looks like? Do you divide responsibilities? Is that formal? Is that something you've worked through? Because I actually think that's really important. I think it's very important for everybody to understand their role and understand what they're doing, John. But what has worked for you in that regard? Or are you just a control freak, so you handle it all?
I am a control freak. Let's just get that right out there. I have to have my hands on everything. So with the Brand X, I do everything, and Deuce brings the bourbon. So that's how we do that. On the Brand X podcast, Kate does the socials. We have a note. We use NoteJoy, and then I have a note out there that we both can look at, and then she throws in stories, and it's a work in progress. We'll find out some way of doing something better, and then I'll say, hey, why don't we do this? And then she'll say I can't, or if we can, or she'll bring up something, and then we'll go through it. But I think communication is key. You can't be afraid to say something like, oh, they'll be really upset if I mention this, so we'll do this. So I think that's it. To be honest with you, on both shows, I do the heavy lifting. I'm retired, so I'm looking for something to do. So they put in the story links, and then I go get them, and then where are we going to put them? And then once we do the show, I do all the post production and stuff like that, which I want to do.
So, John, do you think that it's really important that someone is the lead on the show? Like, do you have to delineate that? Does there have to be somebody that is like, this is the person that's leading? I appreciate all the help. I appreciate what you're bringing to the table. But do you think there needs to be a leader on the show?
I think there's I'm going to call it an A mic and a B mic. I think there has to be that. I'm not 100% sure that you can have just one person, or can it be a complete, can it be just a partnership? Sometimes I think there has to be someone that says yes or no to finally.
I think, yeah, I agree with you. I think that there is something for the audience's sake. I think there's something that they connect with, gravitate to when there is that clear A mic versus B mic, the person that's kind of the anchor of the show. And I think that's what we try to establish here with me, just because, yeah, I am probably Mike A. I am the anchor, but yeah, and that's really mainly just to drive the ship so that the audience feels like there's some organization and it's not too chaotic. And yes, most people don't have 6 different co-hosts like I do, maybe more actually, but I think even when you have 2, I think it's still important that there's one person that's driving the ship. And sometimes, I don't know if you do this, John, but sometimes I think switching off a little bit can work too, right? Like, it doesn't always have to be the same person as the anchor. I think you can switch that up. So I have some clients that do that every other show. They just keep switching back and forth. One takes the lead, then the next one takes the lead.
We use music lingo here. We say first chair, second chair.
That's right. That's right. Yes. When I know I'm going to be out, I will reach out to DR because Ralph is happy to always take that first chair. So I always reach out to DR and just ask her, do you mind taking this quote unquote second chair? Because I think that's also important, just because I think it's important that the anchor host knows that they've got that support. They've got that backup. Right. So that's why I make sure that, I kind of assign those chairs, at least the first couple, to make sure that just things feel like they're going to run smoothly.
The only pushback I have is I would never throw somebody into something that I don't think they're ready for.
Oh, yeah.
That being the first chair, and then you throw them in there, and then they freak out about being able to do that. It was funny. I believe in my time that I'm a better co-host than I am at running the show. At one time, I felt like I was a lot better at running the show. And I was threatening Kate last night that, how about you be the number 1 chair? And I just kind of go back and lob jokes in. And I think we might get to that. There's some things that I've done with Kate, like I can't have comments up. I am a squirrel. If there's something shiny in front of me, I can't have that up. I don't know how you do it.
I don't know how I don't do it very well, I'll be honest.
Kate handles the comments, and there's other things that we'll do. But so I would like to be able to have a show. Bruce's show, after we get done here, Bruce does a show at 9:00, and he's the host. And I just sit back. It's so much fun. I just sit back and listen, and I lob a joke in here or there, or have a statement or a comment. and it's so much fun and it's so much easier. But everybody that runs the show knows that when you're here, there's a tightness in your chest. I've done over 1,000 episodes, and every time before I feel like I'm pit in my stomach, and then as soon as we go live, it goes away. But there's always a tension in your chest as you're doing this.
I agree with you, and I think just based on experience, I don't think I've ever done a solo podcast, but I work with solo podcasters, and I think that pit can be harder sometimes to get rid of when you are doing it just by yourself. I think it makes it feel a little easier when you have somebody across the desk, if you will, that's there just as support. That sounding board helps a lot, I think, for a lot of people, not everyone, but I think it's a great advantage to have that co-host.
I'll tell you what I did. At one point, I said I want to do a solo. I don't want to do a solo podcast, and I made myself do it. So I went on every day, and at first it was horrible. Yeah. I hated it, and then I did it every day for a while, and then when I finally got really comfortable doing it, and I could do an hour, and I was not having any problem, I realized I don't like doing this, so I stopped. But I know I can.
Yeah, exactly. How many episodes roughly did you do before you decided I can't do this?
About 25.
Okay.
So
I think that's
a month.
Totally fair. I think that's a reasonable amount of time to really see, okay, because at first it's going to be uncomfortable and you're going to feel like, yeah, I can't do this, right? But I appreciate the idea of you just pushing through, getting enough done before actually saying, okay, this ain't for me.
Once I was comfortable doing this, I was like, you know what? I don't really want to do this, but I was comfortable doing it.
Okay, real quick, pausing here, and then I'm going to go to BC with a question. I want to remind you, or really share with you, that if you're serious about starting or growing your podcast, don't try to figure it out alone. Here at Ironic Media, I help podcasters launch and grow shows that actually move the needle with better sound, better videos, smarter strategy, and a clear path to success. So go to ironicmedia.com and let's build something that you're proud of. Okay, BC, you have a question for either John or the room. Go for it.
I do. So I'm curious, John, how would you suggest, when we're ready, we go about acquiring or at least enlisting curious people to be co-hosts? Do we put an ad out on Indeed? Is this like a LinkedIn thing, or do you just hit a couple of groups on Facebook to say, hey, I'm open and willing? Weird phrasing, sorry. But hey, looking for a co-host who's interested. How do you go about that?
I think that anywhere, most of us know podcasters. And if two podcasters find out they have something in common, I'll just use the game of poker. Oh, we should do a podcast about that. I would say go to the niche or what you're going to do, and then find people that are very passionate about that, and then listen to them talk. And even if they've never podcasted before, just say, I do this podcast thing, and if you got a microphone, I think we could make this work. And then just try a couple test episodes where you just get in and talk and see if there's some kind of chemistry there. Because if there's no chemistry, it's like pulling teeth. It's horrible. I've had a friend who has been podcasting for over 10 years, and we thought it would be great if we did a show together. We did like 3 episodes, and we never put one out, but we did 3 episodes together, and it was horrible. It was so disjointed and disconnected, and it was like, be funny, and I'm like, I'm trying, and it was back and forth. It just did not work. But both of us podcast with other people, and it works.
Yeah, and I'm reading in the chat here. Tim says here on Clubhouse, I co-hosted with my podcast mentor, Kyle Bondo, for 60 episodes. Our podcast topic was pod fading and how to avoid it. Naturally, it pod faded. A show about pod fading. Imagine that. Thanks, Tim. All right. And BC, did you have a follow-up? I just wanted to make sure.
I did not.
Okay. Just making sure. All right, cool. So I'm curious, by the way, if you are watching or listening, put a 1 in the chat if you are a solo podcaster. Put a 2 if you have a co-host. Just curious who's listening right now and what type of podcasters are listening right now. We got several 1s coming out on Clubhouse here. And yeah, Ralph says he's a 1 and a 2. That makes sense. So is Gabe. And Jonathan is a 1 now, but used to have a co-host as well. BC, also solo podcaster. Okay, cool. This is interesting stuff. So, John, what should co-hosts talk about before they ever go live, hit that record button together?
I would just say how the show's going to flow, how you're going to go into and out of segments, who's responsible for what, who is going to do the reads, who's going to do commentary, that kind of stuff. I just think that just to go over the show of, what you're going to do during the show. Also have both or all the co-hosts involved in the prep so that they don't come in cold. There's some times where Kate will throw a story in and I didn't get a chance to read it, or I'll ambush her with a story. Well, sometimes I like ambushing her with a story because I know how she's going to react. But, if you ambush somebody and they really don't know what's going on, it can be awkward. But most of the time everybody's set up and they know what the stories are going to be. So they have at least some kind of idea what they're going to talk about.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Gabe in the Clubhouse chat says, I do a show with my wife on love and relationships, which I think is a beautiful thing. And I feel like that's also dangerous. Maybe not for Gabe, but I could see that, that you got to really have the right kind of chemistry to also be able to do a podcast with your spouse or significant other, just like in business, right? Like, I think, some marriages are best to just stay marriages and not bring business into it. And I think that goes for podcasting too. And I'm not suggesting people shouldn't do it. I'm just saying you got to really be careful and talk about talking with your co-host ahead of time. I think that deserves a very serious sit-down conversation between spouses on, what their expectations are, what their roles are, etc., or else things could get really sticky really quickly.
Just let your wife be in charge, just like at home.
And that's a great way to handle it. I agree. And I want to just divert here for a second, because somebody in the chat here, one of your co-hosts said that your current show cost them their marriage. And I'm curious if you know what they're talking about. Okay.
That is Bob. And he was married to a psycho.
Oh.
And because one time we were podcasting and she turned the breakers off to his studio and he just went out. But again, that, of course, I get blamed for everything, which is fine. You have to have a relationship with your wife where she knows you're going to go out and you're going to talk about something. She told him that she did not want him podcasting. She was I'll just go into it. She was a very jealous person. So if we had a female that was in the chat and said something to Bob, then she was furious about that. I'm telling you,
wow.
The woman was a psycho. It was the best thing I've ever done to him, is get him away from that woman. The fact of the matter is that they went through therapy and everything. And then when he found it wasn't going to work, first thing he did is he says, hey, I'm ready to podcast again, because we had taken a month and a half off so he could work on it. And he's like, I'm ready to podcast I'm ready to podcast again. When do you want to do it? I said, I can be ready in 45 minutes. And we went on and did a show. So
love that.
Yeah, it can ruin relationships. It absolutely can ruin it. But
Yeah. And I see also that Kate has commented that a few people have assumed that you and she are married.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. They're shocked when they find out Kate is married. I am not. They are shocked when they find out that we're not in really, because we kind of bicker back and forth like a couple. She's my podcast wife. What can I tell you?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Just like people say they have work wives and work husbands. Same thing. Yeah. Go ahead, Ralph.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me. We've talked a lot about marriages. It kind of takes me to conflict resolution. Not sure why that comes to mind, but works for me. But let's talk about that, because I noticed one of the things when I listen to your show, you and Kate sort of get into this, you're talking over me situation. And I know that can be really frustrating and I do this with Mark sometimes. Like, I'm trying to not do that, but it's hard, John. How have you done that? And what are some things that you've done to build up that conflict resolution, Kate? And I'm sure Kate is listening. Kate, you and I have never met, but you are a saint, my friend, and you give him a lot of space. But Mark, John, how do you make that happen? How do you make that work?
I gave up, because I tried my best, because I'll be talking. And again, it's being a podcaster and being somebody that is just talking. When you're talking to somebody, they want to say that they're engaged. So they're, yeah. And I try to get it. And finally, I made such a big stink about it. People would say, we don't hear her doing that. And I'm like, okay, I give up. And I keep talking over it. Sometimes she says, I wanted to say something and you just keep talking over me. I'm like, you kind of trained me. You train me to talk over you because I can't listen to you. I can't do two things at once. I can't listen to you and continue talking. So when you talk under me, I can't listen to that to know when you're doing it. You almost have to put your hands up and stop, or something to stop me from talking. I gave up. I just gave up about it. And
But John,
to do it.
Do you go after the show and do you guys have a dialogue? Do you talk about, are you able to talk those things through and say, hey, I'm sorry that this happened. I'm sorry that this happened. Or is it just live and raw? And then as soon as the show's over, hey, we're all good again. What does that look like for your relationship?
It is. There's only been a couple times, my fault, where I've overstepped the line, and I just, knowing Kate, I let her cool down, and then we'll talk about it. One was about a person that I talk about that she's not a fan of, and I kept doing it, and then she's like, I don't want you to do this anymore. I'm like, yeah, okay. And I did it again, and that kind of upset her. But I think there are times when we bicker back and forth, and then afterwards we laugh about it. Or there are times where, we're bickering, but we're both laughing at each other as we're doing it. It's not really, it's performative more than it is actual.
And Matt in the chat here says that podcasts with partners, I think, are great for the therapeutic aspect.
Oh, no.
Why are you laughing, John?
I think it's the worst. I really believe it's the worst idea. The worst thing if you really believe that, why don't you get a group of friends together, sit down with your significant other and start talking about your problems? Let's see how that goes. I'm sorry. I don't believe in that.
Matt, do you want to respond?
Absolutely do. Good morning, everybody.
Yeah.
Listen, this is going to go directly against what you were saying there, and not to disagree. All the stuff that you're saying is great, and I think you missed therapeutic and thought it meant therapy, which is definitely not what I was talking about there. The perfect example is that I do a podcast with my wife. She's Irish, I'm Australian, and we moved from Australia in 2023. And me doing podcasts for a couple of years before that, we wanted to do one about our move. So moving from Australia to Ireland, we did 5 or 6 episodes before we left Australia. Did one that chronicled different aspects of us wrapping up the house and packing the bags and doing all these things, and a little bit of time here, and then have done episodes here since as well. Now, we've been together for a while before we did the podcast. I'm a podcast producer, now professional, but at the time I'd been doing it as a bit of a side hustle for a bit. So the roles and responsibilities wasn't really an issue for us, which was great. But having that space, because we talk about being expats moving to a different place in the world, it gave us the space to talk about it in a way for people that aren't just in our pair. Like, it's not just us talking to each other with everything that we understand about ourselves. It allows us to objectively explain and talk it out as if the people listening don't know our full story. And that creates the platform to discuss things in a bit of a different perspective. And in that sense, that therapeutic aspect is us discussing things in a different way than if no one was watching. Now, it kind of sounds, when I explain it that way, that there are problems to fix, and we're just at each other all the time because I'm Australian. I need Ireland to be hotter. Why does it rain all the time? Why is it so terrible? It's definitely not like that. But I think without the podcast that we've put together, we wouldn't have come to terms with the move back to Ireland for her and to a new country for me in the same way. And I mean, we tick a lot of boxes that you've been talking about that can sometimes be issues. Like, we work well together. We've both been in careers that require us to talk in front of people. So guiding the conversation is easy for us. Like, the performative aspect is fairly easy. But there is something to creating a podcast about a topic. It doesn't have to be therapy, but that gives you a different perspective, but can also do well as something that people enjoy listening to, which is
how many
what
episodes?
We hear about a lot.
How many episodes do you have?
We did 16 episodes just before the end of 2023, and we've come back and we've done 3 since at the beginning of this year. So we didn't put limitations on ourselves from the podcast perspective. Like, we weren't like, okay, weekly, 6 months to a year, we'll have sponsors, It was us. The purpose for us was providing people listening with insights and aspects for making the move, as well as it being a place where we can talk about stuff. And invariably, as a secondary goal, it was a chance for people to listen in on where we're at without messaging us directly. Like, I'd say 50% of our listenership is probably people that we know already. But yeah, sorry, I talked over you there.
I'm just saying, tread lightly, my friend. That's all I can say.
Well, I think they're done, so I think they're okay.
No, we're still going.
Oh, you're still going. Okay.
Yeah, when you get to 100 episodes, I'll call it a success. I don't know. Mate, you are tap dancing on a minefield, I believe. But hey, good luck with it.
I don't think so. I will strongly disagree on that. But,
okay,
that's my position.
I do see a little bit of what Matt's saying, even from a perspective that podcasting, it can be good for conflict resolution if you're doing it with somebody who is also in your life personally, because you have people watching and listening to you. And I think that can sometimes, not always, but I think that can sometimes force you and that other person to maybe tone it down a little bit, right? Like, if you are just private, the two of you, you could have a very heated, maybe even sometimes inappropriate, depending on how you fight, conversation. Whereas when you're on the mic in front of a camera, however you have your setup, you may tone it back a little bit, and just because people are watching, and you may want to make sure you're putting your best face on, right? Jonathan, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, you feel like you're an example for other people, because people do say that you're an example for them. And Mimi and I were not married, but a lot of times there was conflict resolution. There were things that we talked about that people would truly appreciate the way that we handled it. And there were times that we were ready to kill each other on air. So it worked out well. So, and like I said, I'm still trying to get her to come back. So one of these days.
Yeah, I hope so. You guys talk about good chemistry. You guys definitely had a really good chemistry, and I would love to see the two of you jump back into it. So yeah, to be continued there. All right, so here's what I want to do. I want to do a quick scenario round, and I'm going to address these scenarios to you, John, but really I'm curious from the others too, if anybody wants to chime in with how they would handle these scenarios. And basically, yeah, here's what I'll do. I'll throw out a couple of these co-host scenarios, and John, I want your first reaction. So the first one is on the topic of being prepared. So if your co-host regularly shows up, which it sounds like Kate would not do this, but if your co-host regularly shows up, let's say a couple minutes before the show and isn't prepared, what do you do?
You're going to have to cover for them. All right, because it's a show and it's about the audience. So you're going to have to cover for them. And then when the mic goes off, kind of like when you're having a marriage podcast and you talk about things and you think it's all great, and then you turn the mic off and you found out it wasn't, there's going to be a conversation. And then when it happens too many times and you're carrying them all the time, then there has to be a real hard conversation where if you don't show up prepared, then I'm going to have to find something else, or we're going to have to do another thing.
Cool. All right. And if anybody else wants to chime in and answer that question, you are more than welcome. BC, go ahead.
For the most part, the same thing. This goes back. A lot of time ago mentioned, there's an etiquette to podcasting. And so if you're it's one thing to be a guest and to just be late to being a guest on a show, but to be a co-host and to know that you've signed up to carry on a certain part of the weight of the show and to not be prepared, I think is just poor etiquette, and will easily cause me to rethink why I spoke to you in the first place to even offer you the chance.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you, BC. Ralph, you want to take the next scenario?
Yeah, and I want to just address what BC said, then I will.
Yeah,
but
please.
I think one of the things that we can do to prevent that, BC, and to everybody listening, is talk through the plan. Have a clear understanding of here's what we're going to do. This is one of the things that Mark and I have done a lot of. We have a weekly sort of management meeting, for lack of a better way of saying it, where we talk through. and we say, okay, here's what we're thinking. Here's what we're thinking. Because if you got to plan it out, you got to be intentional about that. So, I mean, I think you're going to have situations sometimes that happens, but I think to have a plan in place, to have a clear delineation of what the goals of the show are. Mark and I had this very conversation yesterday. What are the goals? What are we trying to get to as a team? What are we trying to get to as a community? I think if you set that out at the beginning, I think it's those unspoken things, which kind of goes for a marriage too, if you think about it. If you want to have a successful marriage, and I'm not sure that I have one, but I've been together for 26 years. I love my wife, but it's hard. That's hard. Communication is hard. But let me pivot to the next thing I want to ask.
Before you do, wait, I think Jonathan wanted to chime in, and then I'll hand it back to you. Go ahead, Jonathan.
I was just going to say our best episodes were the ones where I showed up not totally prepared. We always had a show plan, but not totally prepared on the topic, and we just had a great conversation. So sometimes it can go the other way too.
I agree with you, Jonathan, and that's something that I'm learning more and more even to this day, is that sometimes I over-prepare for this show, and I stress the heck out when I'm planning, because I'm like, oh, this isn't enough. I got to do more. I got to do more. I got to do more. And, talk about, some of you may recall all the sleepless nights I was having. I would just stress myself out about it. So I think there is something to be said about planning, but not necessarily planning every moment. Right?
TTP.
Right. Trust the process. That's DR and I. We say that often to one another when we're talking about the show here. Yeah. Great points, Jonathan. And John, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, sometimes you got to be a jazz musician. In other words, you got to ski bop, and there's nothing wrong with you playing the show, and then something happens and you go off on a tangent. It's one of the best shows. So you just don't be so rigid. That I spent all night planning for this. Darn it, we're going to do this show. No, go where the show goes.
Yeah, and especially with this particular show, with the morning show, with so many voices, it goes in different directions all the time. All right, before we get to Ralph's next scenario, Sid had something. Go ahead, Sid.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of echo what Jonathan just said about off the cuff and he and me. I mean, we did that yesterday, Mark. I didn't really know what we were going to talk about. I had a general idea, but I didn't know what the questions are. And I mean, I'm good off the cuff. So, and I think you are too, and your other two co-hosts were as well. And so I think there's something magical about that. And I have a segment that airs once a month on my show called Hot Takes, that there's no prep because I bring a co-host on, and we spin a wheel of topics, and wherever the question lands, we hot take the answer, our thoughts to the answer to that question or whatever the topic is. And it's spectacular. Because if you're confident in who you are, what your experience is, you should be able to answer almost any question, right? And it's working so well. I mean, my audience absolutely loves that segment. And I get tons of feedback every time that we do it. And I think there's something magical about off the cuff. I think there's just something special about sharing your real thoughts and your real perspectives in real time and not being so prepped that it just sounds so curated.
Agreed. Thank you, Sid. And yes, Sid is referring to our Empowered Podcasting live show that we do every other Wednesday. That was yesterday. And if you're curious about it, go to podcastingmorningshow.com/EPC live, and you will see yesterday's show right there embedded on the page. You can just press play and enjoy. We don't put it out as a podcast, so you got to watch that one in particular as a YouTube or LinkedIn video. Okay, so with that, Ralph, I'm going to have you give us one more scenario, and then let's share some takeaways from today's show. Go ahead.
All right, John, let's see this scenario. Your co-host dominates the conversation and leaves little room for you or the guest. How do you address that?
Okay, I'm sure Bob gave you this question. You do have to break in. And Bob would say, well, I don't have anything to say. You took all the good points. So then I would say to Bob, okay, this time you're going to go first and then I'll mop up. Like, in other words, because I do feel that I listen to somebody and they take these points and then I have something else to say after that. And then Bob was like, no, I don't want to go first. And I'm like, okay, well then you get nothing to say or whatever. I don't know how to do this, but we're going on the fly. Also, Bob says he doesn't like over prepping. Yeah, we know. But every once in a while, you got to have something to talk about.
Yeah. All
Sounds
right.
like you and Bob need a counselor, my friend.
I think so.
No.
and listen, Bob did not send us that question. by
No,
the
he
way.
did not. That was pre-planned.
That was
It was in the
pre-planned.
chat. I just, after 45 minutes, I found out how to get into the chat here so I can see the chat now.
Yeah, well,
like
now
the
you're going to
chat.
get distracted, John.
See?
Yeah.
Now see?
And again, John, your website, your show, before I ask you my final question.
The Boomer Bunker, we live stream 6:30 Eastern Time, Mondays and Thursdays. You can find us on YouTube, Rumble, and Twitch.
I saw that Kate
Is
had
that
said
6:30 a.m. or 6:30 p.m.?
6:30 p.m. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And you can find all our links to everything at boomerbunker.com.
awesome. And I saw Kate said you guys used to do that 5 days a week, the live stream.
Oh, well, see, here's what happened. Bob says to me on a Sunday night, I want to do a live show, a morning show every morning. And I'm like, okay. And he says, I want to start Monday. And I said, that's a horrible idea. When do we start? So we spent the whole day getting everything ready, the name and everything, got the RSS feed up and everything. And we started Monday, and we did it for like a month. And then it was a grind. And I said, I can't do this every day. So we went to 3 days, and then we decided to go to 2.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do this.
I don't know how I do it either. I really don't. I mean, everybody.
But I love that you do.
Thank you. Everyone has heard me ad nauseum talk about what I'm going to do. That's why we're doing it later. The later time, I'm hoping, is going to keep things fresh and engaging for me. But yes, and overall, I just have such a passion for doing this and meeting with all these people every day that's what keeps me coming back every morning. So my final question to you, John, what's one thing that every co-host should do more often?
Okay. Honesty. Be honest. If something's bothering you, tell the other person, even if it's hard to tell the other person, because if you keep that inside, it festers, and that leads to conflict, and then conflict leads to pod feed.
I think that's a great scenario. That's when I didn't communicate. I wasn't being honest with my co-host, and that honestly then just led to that pod fade. So yeah, I'm with you there. And I think, let's see. So if we're wrapping things up, I think that we've learned today that chemistry gets the show started. Communication keeps it going, right? Roles don't have to be equal, but they do need to be made clear. And hard conversations should happen. Maybe actually, I'm going to say, I wrote this down, but I don't know that this is true or not. John, you tell me. Hard conversations should happen off air, early, and respectfully. What are your thoughts?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's fun to just mix it up on the air.
I agree.
I say if it's really, really something that you think that they're going to be upset about, then off air. But if it's something that you think you can hash out, sometimes I would say on the air.
Yeah, I think that if it's not too sensitive of a subject, I think doing it on the air can do a lot, right? The audience appreciates that. They like that behind the scenes stuff, especially if it does include a little bickering like you and Bob often do.
And Kate. Kate and I mix it up also.
And
too.
Kate, yes. All right, cool. Well, that will do it for this episode. And John, thank you so much, not just for being here today, but for being a part of this community more than just today, right? You found us, maybe a month or so ago, I think, through Ralph, and you've been a big part of this moving forward. So thank you. Appreciate you being a part of all this. Really, really do.
I got to thank Ralph. When I first met Ralph and I found out he was a Christian podcaster, I didn't say anything about my show. And then he started listening to my show. And then he told me, he says, I listened to your show. And I went, oh my God, I had a heart attack. And I was like, oh, sorry. So I found out I'm his guilty pleasure. And I love that. I do love that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. All right. I'll just bite my tongue. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. And thank you all for being a part of this great conversation. And remember, we're back tomorrow, Fridays. It's our wins from the week segment. We will share our wins from this past week. Each individual will share at least one win that we want to celebrate together as a community. And we'll be diving into the mailbag, answering your podcasting questions, giving you our advice, our experiences to help you with your podcast. So until tomorrow, make it a great